Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations about money. Join your host, Lauren Williams, four-time Olympian turned financial planner, as her guests share their stories about how they manage money. We aim to help you own your personal money story and feel good talking about it. Lauren will teach you that money is a tool that can help you live the life you want. You should feel comfortable listening, sharing, and communicating about it. And now, here's your host, Lauren Williams.
Hello, and welcome to the Worth Listening podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and today I'm excited to have Annie Pokorny here to share her money memoir with us. Annie recently retired from professional cross-country skiing and now works in marketing. Annie and I discuss what it's like to be a professional athlete when you have to find your own funding and how she lived a zero-sum lifestyle while writing grants to support herself in her career. We move on to life after sport, and Annie keeps it so real on her journey to figuring out how to manage her personal finances. I'm sure many will relate to that hashtag adulting woes that she faced. We finish up with her choice to live in an area where the cost of living is pretty high, but for her, worth it to budget accordingly to enjoy all the town has to offer. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Let's listen to Annie share her money memoir. All right, everybody, welcome to the Worth Listening podcast. Woo! Let's celebrate a little bit. Today, I am excited to have Annie Pokorny. Did I say it right?
You sure did.
Ooh, I'm so good at saying it.
You are.
And she is going to share with us her money memoir. Let's just start with you introducing yourself to the listeners a little bit. And once you introduce us, tell us your first memory of money.
So my name is Annie Pokorny, as was well pronounced. And I am formerly a professional cross-country skier. I grew up in the West, in the mountains. I've always been skiing. I went to Middlebury College and then raced for a few years and now have taken my path into the quote-unquote real world, which has been a real crux in my money memoir for sure. My first memory of money was probably, I had two older brothers that were much older than I was. So they were 10 years older and were getting jobs and things like that when I was like 6 or 7. Really, the first time I remember money was probably, we just had Easter, so this is appropriate, was at Easter egg hunting. There was always the golden egg that had $20 in it when we could find it. And my older brothers were so much older than me and taller and faster, they could always find it. And I think the first time I found it was when I was about 7 years old, before my brothers. And I got $20 whole.
What did you do with the money?
I think I probably spent it immediately, honestly. I would like to say that I was a big saver, but I think I probably went straight to like Walmart and bought a Barbie with it or something.
A Barbie. Because every 7-year-old needs a Barbie.
Exactly. Like, this is what I want. So
that brings up a good point, though. Can you talk a little bit about what money was like in your household, or was it something that was talked about, not talked about? What kind of examples did you have in your parents in the way you should spend or save or anything?
My two older brothers were also athletes. They were Nordic combined athletes on the national team. Cross-country skiing is an endurance sport. So we were fully in training at like 14. And so when we were in high school, school and training were our jobs. My parents were really understanding of that. And they really supported us in our athletics. And so they didn't force us to go get jobs, and they supported us through our sport. But they also wanted us to have some semblance of understanding money. And so we did. I had an allowance. And my dad in particular was pretty clear that he wanted me to learn how to manage money early. So I had an allowance that I got every week. If I got to the point where I wanted to go see a movie and I didn't have any money, that was my problem. I didn't save my money. And so that was actually a pretty good lesson for me to learn how to budget and live on a budget. This is how much money you get. I had some odd jobs of babysitting and lawn care, but I never really had a job until I was pretty much done ski racing, which is pretty wild.
I mean, it's one of those things where people don't realize how much time goes into you really being a master of your craft and not being able to juggle 6 or 7 things. You have to be able to really put your whole heart into being able to do this and also, like you said, get your educations.
Mm-hmm. I was definitely lucky to come from a family that could help me do that and could support me doing that. And I definitely had peers who I raced against who weren't in that position. So I felt really grateful to have my parents who would support me that way. And they also knew that if I could ski race, I could get a college scholarship. It could end up being a really good investment for them. So it worked out.
So tell us about that then. Was that in fact what happened? Was there a scholarship in the making?
I was one of those kids that had opportunities to get a scholarship and instead chose to go to a private college that didn't do athletic scholarships. I was a philosophy major. I believed in big ideas, and I just wanted to go to a little liberal arts school. So I think that in some ways that actually didn't work out. My older brothers managed to get scholarships and go to school on those scholarships, whereas my parents paid my tuition.
Let's pause and talk a little bit about the actual process of going to college and picking out your school. And what were the conversations being had around, I want to go here versus wanting to go there, where, even a public versus a private institution, there's a difference in the cost. And so what kind of conversations were your parents having with you about, if you make this decision, then this happens, or this is the implications of that?
Well, a lot of it had to do not only with the implications of the cost of tuition, but what kind of support there was on the ski team that were at these schools. With ski racing, there's kind of different racing circuits within NCAA and outside of that. And a lot of people will still race the domestic and international circuit while racing as an NCAA athlete. And so I, in part, chose to go to a Division III school because it would allow me to not have to prioritize NCAA racing. And I could still race NCAA, but I would have coaches and support that would help me do a lot of international racing as well.
So at this point, had you set a goal that you wanted to become a professional skier? Why were you thinking already international racing versus NCAA racing?
Oh, yeah, I definitely wanted to. And there was actually part of me that almost didn't go to college. A lot of athletes who are Nordic racers end up not going to school and just going straight to the US ski team and diving in and are incredibly successful going that route. And I saw that happening. I saw my peers doing that. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And my parents, actually, it has to do with money. They were like, yeah, cool. Like, you should do that. You have to pay for it. Like, we're not going to do this anymore. We'll pay for your college, but we're not going to pay for you to not go to college in order to ski. And so that was immediately for me. I was like, okay, I'll go to college. Like, that sounds like something. So I skied 2 years of NCAA racing. And then after my sophomore year, decided to start skiing full time. So I didn't do all 4 years NCAA. And that was definitely when my parents said the same thing, like, hey, awesome. We're so glad that you're pursuing it. We're so glad you're pursuing your dreams. You go, girl. You're going to have to figure it out. If you're going to figure out your sponsors, we'll pay for college and that's it. I was lucky just to have parents who would pay for college. So I was like, all right, I can do this.
So talk about where you were financially in that moment. Did you just have a typical $200 in your account that you kind of been living the college life?
Oh my gosh, I had no financial education at all. The school I went to was a small liberal arts college. It's Middlebury. They used to call it Club Mid because everything is inclusive. So you don't even swipe a card to get a meal. You don't, like, everything is included in tuition. And so it was kind of like going to an all-inclusive resort. And I didn't know how much my living costs were. I didn't know how much money I was spending on food. I didn't know any of that. Like, a lot of college students tend to learn that in their first few years of school. I really had no idea.
How did you figure it out?
Out of self-defense. I basically started, most of my sport is funded through nonprofit donations, through nonprofits helping people. We have Women's Sports Foundation, which is how you and I met. I received grants from them. I also received grants from the National Nordic Foundation and from a few local nonprofits. And you have to, when you submit a grant application, you have to create a budget. And so I learned really quickly how much money it costs for me to eat food and how much money it costs for me to ski race and to buy the clothes I needed to train and what counted as training and what didn't, and started getting really good at categorizing all of those things, as I did with my little allowance that I used to get. Like, okay, this is going to go towards Barbie's shoes. This is going to go towards... I joined a domestic team that had athletes who had been doing this for a really long time. So I had some really excellent advisors and mentors in how to fund a cross-country ski career with 3 figures saved up in your bank account.
That's $999 at the most for those who are like, what's 3 figures?
Yeah, exactly. To clear that one up. Not a lot.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about like how it works in ski racing. And a lot of people think, oh, you left school to pursue professional sports, so of course you're a millionaire because all professional athletes are millionaires, right?
Right. Wrong. It's wrong. So unlike, say, some major league athletic activities in the US, cross-country skiing is what they call a fringe sport. Until now, we now have 2 gold medals from the Olympics, which maybe that will change. Yeah. Booyah. Go team. So proud. So maybe that will change some of the way that we fund our sport. But until that point, at least, the basic way that it functioned was the US ski team will fund their A team, which is somewhere around their top 8 athletes. And in order to be on the A team, you have to be in the top 30 in the world. And so those folks get their skiing paid for, a large part of their training, some of their housing, but they fundraise what's left. And they're making some money on the World Cup too, which is good. They're putting something in the bank. And then the B team and down and all the development programs are pretty well self-funded. There's an organization called the National Nordic Foundation that kicks in some money. A lot of people have like local fundraising organizations, but pretty much everything from there on is community supported and sponsor supported. And there aren't many endorsements. There aren't a lot of, I wear these skis and I get money just because I wear them. A lot of it is tied into results. A lot of it is tied into just how personable you are, because some folks don't actually know what cross-country skiing is. And it can be kind of a grind. I mean, I remember I was a full-time athlete, so I was training twice a day, almost every day. And I remember spending most of the time before and after training writing grant applications and letters to my family friends for some campaign that I was doing, and figuring out what my budget was. If I make this competition, how much more money am I going to have to kick in to make it there, just to make it to the start line? And just kind of a financial plan for what happens if I get injured and I don't have a job, I don't have reserve funds that I can pay for food if I'm not racing.
So what was that plan B?
Mommy, daddy. I really had to rely on my parents, I think. I think plan B is I knew, because I went to the school I went to and I was confident in my education, I knew that I would be able to get a job if I had to, but I didn't want to. I wanted to ski. I was so much more passionate about it, and it just gave me so much life. I almost wouldn't rely on a plan B. I knew that I would figure out if I had to, and I didn't want to plan too much for if that happened.
No, for sure. And I think you bring up a really good point about, like you said, the passion that you had for what you wanted to do. And so frequently someone says, hey, that's crazy. Don't do that. This is a lot more safe. Go this way instead. And you were very serious about, one, creating the budget, and then also going out to find the money so that you could go after your passion. And I think that's a lot different than what people think of us as millennials or people that are pursuing something that's outside of the regular Monday through Friday, college degree, 9 to 5 kind of life. It takes a lot of life skills to be able to say, okay, I'm going to risk it all, but I know that I need a roof over my head and I need food, and I've got to really work my butt off to write into someone to get that food and that roof over my head, in addition to my skiing, the time that it takes me to do the thing that I'm passionate about doing, so that I can make this all fit together. I always bring it up and say, like, everyone talks about how much athletes sacrifice in order to get what they want. I don't feel like we're sacrificing. I feel like we're making the choice to pursue this, not that. I feel like sacrifice has a negative connotation about what you're doing. And the way you just described it, you're so smiley and passionate and you were excited about this. It wasn't a sacrifice. It was the choice that you made and you wanted to do it.
It's so funny. I talk to a lot of my friends now about my college experience. I was either racing NCAA or I was racing professionally while I was at school. And so it really changed the college dynamic for me. I was really focused on other things than what a lot of college students are doing. And so many of my friends mourn for my college experience. Like, I missed out on this life. And I was like, are you kidding me? what I got to do was so much better than like a semester abroad or being in a beer-soaked basement. First of all, I got to do that a little bit. And then I also got to travel and learn so much and meet so many incredible people. There was no point did it ever feel like a sacrifice. And it was kind of at the point in my life in the last year or so when it did start feeling that way that I realized that it was time for me to pivot and to change. I totally agree with you. When you're in it, there's just this excitement and passion. Even if you know you're not making a ton of money, putting a bunch of money in the bank, figuring out you don't have retirement, you don't have 401k, whatever, you know you're going to figure it out because what you're learning on the road when you're an athlete is so valuable afterwards. Exactly like you said, I spent so much time writing, figuring out this narrative to make cross-country skiing interesting. And now my side gig is a marketing copywriting. I write and I help with marketing. And like, that's the skill that I learned while I was on the road. So
yeah, sports definitely teaches you life skills. And that's something that a lot of people take for granted. I always try to encourage young girls, like middle school, the dropout rate of women participating in sports, it just falls off drastically compared to boys. And it's because bodies are changing and all that kind of stuff. And you don't realize that just because you don't see this finish line, a lot of the boys think, well, I'm going to become an NFL player, or I'm going to be MLB, or that hope and that dream is still alive for them. And women start to say like, oh my goodness, I don't know what's happening to my body. And I don't know what the point of this is in the long term anyway. And they give up. But the life skills that you get from participating in sports are priceless as what they can give you in order to be able to survive, whether you're going to college, going on to high school, or going on to play pro. Like those skills that you get from continuing to play sports will contribute to who you are and what you're able to do outside of sports for the rest of your life. So sorry, little tangent.
Well, I just have one more addition. So you're talking about like women in particular. It's interesting you say that because I was actually at a Fast and Female event many years ago, which is an event put on by women, obviously trying to empower younger girls. And I had a parent ask me, I was talking about taking time off of college and the decision to do that. And I had a parent ask me, well, what are you going to put on your resume after all of this? And I responded, like, I have incredible marketing skills, communication. I can budget like no one else. Travel. Also, I'm really good at failing. Sports teaches you how to fail and just get blown over, obliterated, and be like, all right, I'm putting on my spandex again tomorrow. I can still see the work that I did. I can still see the improvements. And I think that's the biggest thing I've taken with me, whether it's money or otherwise, is just not really being afraid to fail a little bit and having that confidence that I'll still put on my proverbial spandex tomorrow and keep going.
And two, that we're coachable.
Mm-hmm.
We're smart individuals and you show up at a job and how am I different from person A versus person B? I have been able to be coached my whole life. You can teach me anything. I know that I can learn anything. And oh, by the way, like, what do you really learn in college? Hey, I'm not knocking college. I am a college graduate. But like the things that I took from college, like every job that I had after college, someone had to train me. And so you had to be coached in this thing, whatever it is that you decide to do. And that's the thing that is the biggest skill, is being able to be coached, being able to take information, process it, and then compute it and do something else with it. Mm-hmm. That is a huge skill that athletes have that I think people take for granted. And it's like you said, what do you put on your resume? So sorry, more tangents for me, but all right, back to you.
We could have our own podcast, man.
we could totally have our own podcast. So I'm interviewing you. So what did happen? Did you end up going back to school? How did you get hired after you moved on from sport to life after sport?
I took all of, I think it was maybe 3 months off of school. So I originally, when I first left, I was like, I'm leaving. I am dropping out of school. I can't have a plan B because otherwise I won't commit myself to plan A. And I spent about 3 months training full time before I was like, okay, I need to get a degree. And I need to figure out a way to do both. And I was really lucky. Again, I went to a really small school that I knew all of my professors. I could go in and talk to them. And we kind of figured out a way that I could strategically take time off, attend school kind of long distance in the spring and come back. And so it took me a little bit of extra time, but I did end up going back to school and I did end up finishing.
In philosophy?
In philosophy. Yep.
What were you planning on becoming?
When I first declared my major, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Ooh.
I was planning on being a lawyer, and I took a logic class and just loved it. And just couldn't wait to take the LSAT. And then as I pursued skiing more, I actually started writing. And so I kept a blog, annieataltitude.com. It's still up. I wrote about my experience in skiing, less from a lens of like, here's what happened today, here's how fast I skied, but more like, here's what I felt today. Like, it was a very personal blog. And I started getting people asking me to write stuff for them, even product descriptions, like copywriting purely, or just write blogs for companies. And I kind of gained this interest in business and interest in marketing and interest in storytelling that led me to start pursuing writing a little bit more full time. And so in my first year out of skiing, that's what I was doing. I had my own business. I was producing marketing campaigns, producing marketing strategy, distribution strategy of content. And then I was also creating content. I was getting to write for some really cool outdoor outlets, writing my blog. I was writing for businesses. And that actually led me to the full-time job that I now have. So I met with a CEO of this business in the town that I live, and he was looking for an events manager and someone who could manage content distribution, and was open to letting me continue side gigs while working. And it was in my dream town, and I got to learn about business, and it just kind of fell together. But it took a little bit of patience and a little bit of being purely an entrepreneur and being okay with the idea that maybe it wasn't going to work. It felt so much like that first year of ski racing full time, where it's like, I don't know if this is going to work for me. Like, who knows, but I'm into it and I'm doing it.
You were saying like it might not work. Like, what didn't feel right, or what were your apprehensions?
Out of skiing, my first year out of skiing, or my first year?
Yeah, first year as an entrepreneur.
I mean, you know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. First of all, I didn't know how to price myself. That was my biggest issue, is I didn't know what I was worth. If I had just like bothered to ask someone, I think I would have gotten an honest answer, because I was so nervous about getting income. I took any job I could get. And so there were some that I wasn't passionate about, and B, wasn't getting paid enough to do what I was doing. I was working so hard and not making that much money, but knowing that bits and pieces of what I was doing would someday come together into this puzzle of who I was going to be and what my career would look like. It's just like in athletics, you just get this flare of inspiration or excitement, and you know you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But that's kind of muddled in this mush of not knowing what's going to happen. And that's what entrepreneurship is like. A lot of what I did was contract work. You don't know when a contract is going to end. You don't know if it's going to lead to anything bigger, if you're getting paid enough, if you're going to make rent. And I live in a ski town in Idaho, which I love. I love it here. I can walk out my door and go for runs and mountain bike. There's no traffic. I ski after work almost every day. I ski before work almost every day. But it's really expensive to live here because it's a little paradise. It's like wanting to live in a tropical paradise. I knew that I was quote unquote sacrificing to live here because I knew I could just go get a job somewhere else.
Right.
So that was a very similar feeling to skiing. I knew I could just go join a firm in a big city, but I was choosing to be here. And so I was choosing entrepreneurship, and I was choosing that uncertainty.
What is one thing that you learned during that year of entrepreneurship about your finances? Like, what was something that was new, that was a little bit different than how it had been managed or organized?
So like I said before, I was pretty much completely run by nonprofits. And so everything I bought or did, I expensed into my grants. So I was living a life that I basically organized around cross-country skiing so that I could write off everything I did.
Right.
Every grocery store, every trip I did was all training. So I was living a zero-sum lifestyle. I wasn't losing money. I wasn't going into debt. And I was very lucky to come out of it without any debt. But I also wasn't making any money. So while on one hand, I was struggling to make it by, here, I also was like, whoa, I made more money this week or this month than what I paid. And there's some more figures in my bank account all of a sudden. I didn't know what to do with it. Do I leave it there? Do I save it? People say spending money is making money, but what am I supposed to spend it on? What's an investment? So I actually just walked into my bank and sat down and was like, guys, I don't know what to do with this. And you seem like good people. And I set up my Roth IRA retirement account, which I really wish I had done when I was 19. But that's okay. The earlier you do it, the better, is something I learned too. That would be the biggest change for me. It was like, okay, I wasn't rolling in money.
Right.
And I still am not. And I just didn't know how to manage it or what to do with it.
And so they helped you at the bank figure out what to do with it, or?
The bank helped me, especially because I was starting a business account.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of changes everything, right? Because when you have like an LLC, the liabilities change and like whose money is what. If you're in a partnership is different. And so they kind of walked me through that. I also got an advisor. There just seems to be a lot of questions about money. And this is where you come in your life too, Lauren, is that you don't just Google. You need a human to talk to and ask these questions that you feel everybody knows. Like everybody talks about retirement accounts and investments and portfolios, and diversifying things and budgets. It's really hard to Google that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I found a couple of people in my community who I felt comfortable asking those questions and being vulnerable with and being like, all right, listen, you probably don't think I have very much money, but I feel like I'm balling right now.
Right. So what do I do with my riches?
Can you give me some perspective? Like, can you tell me if I'm doing well?
I think you bring up a really good point, though, about reaching out to someone and that hesitancy that some people feel to ask for help. It's kind of like you hear all these terms, and so people are throwing them around, and you feel like must be everybody knows them except for me, so I better not ask.
Yeah.
But really getting to a point to say like, hey, this is something I don't know. I'd like to learn more about. Despite what people think, everything is not on Google or easy to understand on Google. And one blog can tell you to do it like this, and another blog can tell you to do it like that. And you're confused about which one is right. So just kind of really putting your ego aside and saying like, hey, I need help with this, and looking for someone to help you. I think that's kind of a big thing.
Yeah, that was a huge thing for me. Functionally right now, I'm in my first job, filling out benefits forms for that. I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. I don't know what this means. And having someone on my team who I'm really comfortable just being like, hey, you got to walk me through this, because I am an infant learning how to function in the world in a lot of ways.
You literally took my next question, really took the words right out of my mouth, because there's so much that you have to navigate when you get your first job. And it's completely overwhelming sometimes. There's so many things that people just don't know about how to navigate that, from HSA to FSA and this amount of deductions. And what am I going to do? Employer match. And I can do more than employer match. Well, how should I put in there? And all these percentages. And it just goes on and on and on. And you're so excited to just get to work, but you're like, oh, like there's this other stuff I have to deal with. Like, how does that go? So can you talk a little bit about how you go about when you don't understand something, like how you talk to the person that you need help with, and what made you feel comfortable with that person?
Starting from the beginning to end, I was very much a newbie in this experience. One of the questions they asked me in an interview was like, what was your first job? And I was like, cross-country skiing. And because of that first answer I gave, I was just really honest from the beginning. Like, listen, I'm a really hard worker. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited by this opportunity. I'm going to have a lot of questions. There's a gal in my office, two of them, actually, well, several people, but there's one in particular who just like every time I see her, she's just like, Annie, do you have any questions today? Like she's fully ready to support me. And I think it's because I just had a very early conversation where I was like, hey, I don't know how to fill out benefits forms.
Right.
I think people really appreciate honesty. And I think especially in business where I'm working, there's a lot of people that talk really big game. And maybe because of a result of my athletic career, like I can't talk the talk if I know I can't walk the walk. And so just from the beginning have just been, hey, listen, like I'm going to need help, but I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be a good teammate to you guys, but you have to help me fill out this paperwork.
Right. Exactly. Otherwise my paycheck's never going to come and I'm going to have to quit.
I definitely didn't want to swallow my pride. I wanted to roll in and be like, I'm amazing. There's nothing wrong with me. You should be so glad you hired me because I know everything. And then you just realize that everybody has questions. And I thought about like how these folks would feel if they were asked to show up to a ski race and had never done it before, had never waxed their skis before, didn't know how long the race was, didn't know if there was prize money at the end.
Right.
How would I help them?
I think that's a really good idea to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, or to paint the picture as if there's some things that I know something about that someone else doesn't know about. And it's okay that I don't know this, as opposed to, telling yourself I have to know everything. I've got it all together, which is what we frequently do. Is I'm going to just keep showing the world. And then inside you're screaming, I have no idea what's happening right now. I hope I can fake it until I get out of here and nobody knows that I'm faking it.
And Google just made me more anxious.
Right. So it's really, an act of bravery to be able to say, like, hey, mask off, guard down. I'm going to be my authentic self. I don't know this, but I'm happy to learn it.
Yeah, I have Googled some things and then gotten overwhelmed and then been like, okay, I need help. I'd be lying if I said I just came in and was immediately vulnerable. But there were definitely parts of it that I, from the start, just had to be like, hey, I don't even know enough to ask a question here. So,
right. Just start from the beginning. Break it down.
Dive in. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay. So have you ever had a really bad experience money-wise that you just like kind of stands out to you and something you like had to learn?
There were several times in the last year where, this is so embarrassing, I'm just going to tell you on your podcast, where like something would happen and I would have this thought, and maybe this is it, but I think not yet, where I'll be like, when I make it, this is like going to be my like NBC Zero to Hero interview piece. There were several weeks last year when I overdrew my account months in a row. I just kept on overdrawing without even knowing it was coming, without really planning for it, based on my credit card or my electric bills or whatever would automatically pay. And it just kept on happening. And I was like, this is going to be the moment where I'm sitting on the Today Show after my best-selling book comes out. And I'm like, yeah, no, before I made it, it was this bad. It was interesting because I didn't feel like I was really poor, like I was failing. I just made a mistake a couple of times. I didn't plan well enough. I didn't actually know my budget. And both of those times when that happened, I was like, oh, maybe I should take a step back here and recognize how much I'm paying for my rent or my power or my food. Maybe I need to stop buying kombucha at checkout because it's $6.
It's so good though. I'm totally addicted.
A dream for me is to be someone who is comfortable and happy in their profession and making enough money to buy organic strawberries and kombucha every time I go to the grocery store. That
is when you've made it.
Is when I've made it. I've been really lucky not to have debt. And again, that's fully due to my parents, and I'm so grateful for that. Mm-hmm. But there were a couple of times when I had $28 in my bank account and kind of had to take a moment and be like, all right. So now we're down to 2 figures for those who were listening before.
Right. Exactly.
Down from 3.
Yes.
And I had to be like, okay, I don't feel like I'm failing. I don't feel like I'm doing the wrong thing, but clearly something has gone wrong. And so being able to admit that and have some introspection and just keep going forward. Put your proverbial spandex back on and just go.
Yes, those proverbial spandex every day. Wake up, proverbial spandex on. Life can happen now.
Life can happen now.
Okay, so having earned most of your money from like nonprofit organizations or having to write those grants, etc., what's your view on kind of charitable giving and how money is to be used for giving?
I remember every time I was writing, there were parts of me I remember writing those grants applications being like, trying to reconcile the feeling of like, am I charity? And is it okay for me to accept someone's money if they could be giving it to like someone who's really, really in need, someone at a shelter, and like I'm doing this to cross country ski. So I kind of dealt with a lot of guilt in that. And how I got over that was the people who are giving me money believe in my story and they believe in this project. They're giving because they want to be a part of it. And hopefully they're also giving to some really important life causes. And also when I have disposable income, it will be my job to give back. And so, yeah, I build in charitable giving into my budget now. And money always goes to the Women's Sports Foundation because they supported me through so much of my career. And that's how we met each other. So I obviously have to give them money. So I always give money to sports projects. And then I leave plenty for passion giving. A lot of it is environmental projects. But I recognize the role of these organizations in supporting so many people, whether they're chasing dreams or just trying to stay alive.
Right.
And now that I actually do have income, I'm excited that that has become part of my life too.
Yeah, I think we sometimes take for granted the idea that being able to make it means you're able to help others too. It's like you have all these goals for yourself, but it's like when I earn above and beyond, or when I live below my means more so, it allows me to be able to help someone else. And when you brought up, like you said, feeling a little bit guilty, like what about poor, starving, or people that have been hurt and things like that. And these people are giving money to sport and to me to be able to do my sport. But it's really about investing in people, period. And what way are people passionate about giving? So find something that you're passionate about helping and give toward that something. And people are passionate about toward helping you. I always find it interesting when people are figuring out like what that thing is and what giving means to them and how they feel compelled to give.
As like a beneficiary of those programs, that did change my life and it did enhance my life. And I know that it enhanced my teammates' lives. It is important work. It does make the world better in a lot of ways. And so it's definitely part of what I do now too and want to do more.
For sure. All right. So now we're headed into our final sprint.
Yeah.
It used to be a lightning round, but that was lame. And so Annie came up with a new name. And from here on out, we will be calling it the final sprint because that's awesome.
I told you I'm a marketing person.
Yes. Can I hire you? All right. Final sprint. 5 questions. Answer quickly. It's not like one word, but snappy, if you will.
All right. Let's do it.
Bring it on home.
I'm ready.
You have $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Kombucha and organic strawberries.
It's so easy. All right. The best thing about being an athlete?
Being able to fail.
Ah.
Yeah.
It is an important thing to be able to do.
And also being able to run up a mountain. That is the coolest thing in the world. And I hope that in my retirement, I can always be able to run up a mountain.
Yeah, I can't run up a mountain. I'm just going to say I'm jealous. Your worst money habit?
Kombucha and organic strawberries.
All right, best money habit?
Budgeting. I'm now good at that. Minus budgeting.
It was in the past. Yes, you're now good at that. Yes.
I'm now good at budgeting.
I know I said only 5, but we're going to keep going.
Okay.
Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Run up a mountain.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be running. You don't even have to buy running shoes. Like anyone can walk outside and walk on a trail. It's so meditative. It's so beautiful. You like totally rejuvenate every piece of your body. Yeah. Walking on trails.
Yeah. Okay. Walking on trails it is. Most meaningful gift you've ever received. Who was it from and why was it meaningful?
Ooh. I received a letter from my oldest brother at Christmas this year, and I got it on Christmas Eve. And he's never written me a letter before. It was actually, I was working at a retail store and they had like reached out to our family members to ask for letters. And my oldest brother sent me a letter that basically just said, "I'm proud of you."
Wow.
So simple, so important. I probably had just overdrawn my account. You know, I was like, that was probably the best gift I ever received.
Yes. Often the best things in life are free.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Or a piece of paper and whatever the ink costs, but we won't get to that.
I think it was pretty low cost.
I think it was pretty low cost.
Yeah.
Kind of free.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, can you share with us one thing that you would like to improve about your own personal finances in the upcoming year?
Improve? I want to invest some more money.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what's the action item to be able to reach your goal?
I think I need to talk to a professional about it.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think I need to do that because I think there's a lot, especially with investments, there's a lot of really flashy stuff out there. You want to invest in like the latest app or the latest something, which I'm young enough that I could be risky about it, but I think I need to talk to someone. That's how it works. And right now I'm not putting that much into my portfolio, so to speak. So I think that it's time for me to start doing a little more.
To ramp it up a notch.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Annie, tell us how we can support you, what you're up to now, where we can find you, and tell us anything you want to tell us.
I'm working full time for this really cool business called the Tugboat Group, and I still have side hustles on the side. I still own my marketing business. It's called Altitude Media, and I'm still writing. So you can find my blog is annieataltitude.com, and I'm writing for Outside. I do some writing for ESPNW. Anyone who will take it. So I'd love for people to just follow that, Annie at Altitude.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time today. I think this is one of our best podcasts ever.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You don't tell everyone that, do you?
I don't tell everyone that.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Annie's Money Memoir. Annie talked about one of the greatest lessons you can learn from sports, how to fail. When you fail at something, it doesn't mean that you're a failure or that you should give up and switch to doing something else. Showing up again and again after you flop takes courage, and it's an important lesson that can be applied to all aspects of life. Our word of the day today, negotiate. Annie shared how she struggled to know how to price herself when she started to work as an entrepreneur. It would be great if people would just pay you a fair amount, but unfortunately, it is not how most of the world works. The ability to communicate the validity of your compensation in a way that helps the consumer appreciate your skill set is critical to long-term success. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your own money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com.